If you're looking for the best camera for YouTube that's easy to use, gives you that pro look, and fits your budget, the Sony ZV-E10 has been our go-to for the past 3 years. But now with the ZV-E10 Mark II, there are some cool new features that could make shooting content even easier and may make it the better investment. So in this video, I'm going to compare these two cameras side by side, touch on the pros and cons of each to help you decide which one is best for you.
You gotta just press record.
Hey, what's up? Nate Swell with Think Media. I got a bunch of different tests comparing the ZV-10 to the new ZV-E10 Mark II, but before we get to that, let's do a quick overview over each camera. Let's kick things off with the Sony ZV-E10, which was released back in August of 2021, and since then we recommended it for YouTube creators. It features a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor that delivers stunning 4K video up to 30 frames per second, which gives you sharp and professional looking footage. What sets the ZV-10 apart is just how compact and lightweight it is, which makes it incredibly easy to take with you on the go. It's also very user-friendly, number one, thanks to its flip-out screen, which allows you to see yourself as you're filming, and two, its impressive and reliable autofocus performance, which is incredibly handy if you're filming content by yourself. Another reason I'm a fan of this camera is its flexibility with interchangeable lenses. This allows you to swap out different lenses and achieve different looks without needing to upgrade your camera. It's a great way to upgrade your image quality and makes the ZV-E10 a solid investment. Also, it's quite affordable at $698 for just the body only, and sometimes you can find it on sale for even less. This just makes it a great option for anyone who's looking to start making YouTube videos without breaking the bank. Now, the new Sony ZV-E10 Mark II has some pretty awesome upgrades that makes creating content even easier. First off, the ZV-10 Mark II has been totally revamped, making it way easier to use. The menus are more streamlined, less cluttered, so you don't have to be hunting around for different settings as you're filming. When it comes to the video quality, the ZV-10 Mark II now shoots 4K up to 60 frames per second. This means you can capture smoother, higher resolution, slow motion footage. Plus, it records it at 10-bit 422 color depth, which means it gives you richer, more accurate colors, and gives you a lot more control when you're color grading your footage. I also noticed that the screen is brighter and sharper compared to the ZV-E10, so you'll have a much better view in tricky lighting situations. They also moved the SD card from the battery slot over to the side now, which makes it a lot easier to swap out your SD cards. And one of my favorite upgrades to this camera is the larger battery, so now you'll be able to shoot for much longer without having to swap out batteries as often. Now, taking a look at the image quality, both the ZV-10 and the Mark II deliver sharp, detailed 4K footage thanks to their APS-C size sensors. Both cameras look fantastic and their standard picture profile without any manual tweaks, which is a great option if you want a natural look straight out of the camera. That being said, I do notice a subtle difference in color reproduction, and that is due to the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II's upgraded sensor, which is actually the same sensor from Sony's A6700 and FX30 cameras. So if you like the look out of those cameras, you're getting the same exact image, just in a cheaper body. And in my opinion, this new sensor produces more true-to-life colors, especially in the skin tones, while the original ZV-10 tends to lean slightly towards magenta, which can be noticeable in certain lighting conditions. This might be a small thing for you, but if you prefer a more neutral and accurate color, the ZV-10 Mark II definitely stands out. Moving on to slow motion, both cameras offer slow motion capabilities thanks to their higher frame rates. However, there is a key difference in resolution. In this test, I'm shooting both cameras at 60 frames per second. However, the ZV-10 Mark II shoots at 4K, while the original ZV-10 is limited to 1080. This bump in resolution is definitely noticeable, so if you plan on using a lot of high frame rates for your videos, then the ZV-10 Mark II is the clear winner here. Next up, we're going to dive into some more advanced video features between these cameras. Now, both the ZV-10 and the Mark II offer the ability to shoot in log profiles, which is a huge benefit for filmmakers who want greater control over the final look of their videos. Log video looks flat and dull straight out of the camera, but that is intentional as it captures more details in the shadows and highlights and gives you more flexibility when you color grade the footage later. For this test, I shot in S-Log3, which is a commonly used log profile, and here's a comparison before and after color grading. Now, where the ZV-10 Mark II pulls ahead is its ability to record in 10-bit color, compared to the ZV-10, which can only do 8-bit. This simply means that the Mark II can capture more colors, resulting in smoother transitions. So when you are shooting in a log profile and doing lots of color grading, you're going to get a much better result with 10-bit video. Next, let's talk about low light performance, because if you're filming, let's say you're vlogging, you're not always going to be in the best lit scenario. So I decided to go out and record just after the sun is setting to test out these cameras. Now, both cameras perform decently in low light. The ZV-E10 Mark II shows a bit of improvement, especially when you start to push the ISO higher. The ZV-E10 Mark II is a little bit cleaner, it has less noise, while on the original ZV-E10 you might notice some more blocky, some fixed pattern color noises in darker areas. So while it's not a drastic difference between the two, the Mark II does look a little bit more pleasing. Now let's do some autofocus tests. Sony is known for its excellent autofocus systems, and both the E10 and the Mark II live up to that reputation. In my test, both cameras performed well, locking onto the subjects quickly and tracking them with precision. However, I feel like the ZV-E10 Mark II feels a bit snappier and is more reliable, particularly if you're tracking fast-moving objects or more complex scenes. For your standard talking head video, or if you're vlogging, either camera will do the job, but if you want the extra level of confidence in your autofocus, the ZV-E10 Mark II is a little bit more responsive. So let's talk about image stabilization, because neither the E10 or the Mark II includes in-body image stabilization, which is a downside if you're shooting handheld video. So I did a few different tests here. First, you'll see this footage without any stabilization, and as you can see, it's quite shaky with these lightweight cameras. Then in the second test, I decided to activate the lens stabilization on the kit lenses, which definitely helps a little, but it's not doing too much. Then finally, I turned on active steady shot, which is Sony's digital stabilization. This does a good job at reducing some of those larger shakes, but there is a noticeable crop into your video, which means you'll have to step further away if you're vlogging or filming yourself. So now we're gonna do a stabilization test between both cameras. Right now I have the image stabilization turned off in camera, so no lens image stabilization, no digital. So this is just what it looks like with both cameras mounted side by side. It is a little shaky even here at 16 millimeters. Now here is another shot with the lens image stabilization on, so it's not gonna do too much, but it should help with some of those micro jitter shakiness. So here's how that looks. So now I have active steady shot on, and it's a little bit more cropped into my face, so it's not showing as much of the environment. But the upside is I do get a lot more stable camera moves, which is definitely nice. So if you want to use active steady shot, you will have to get a much wider angle lens. While this active steady shot is helpful, it's not as good as having in-body image stabilization like in the higher end models such as the Sony a6700 or FX30. However, it can work in a pinch when you need image stabilization and you don't mind the crop. Next up, I want to test the rolling shutter. This is important to keep in mind, especially if you're filming fast moving objects. Both cameras exhibit rolling shutter, so typically with these cameras, they don't capture the whole image at once, but they scan from top to bottom. So on lower end cameras, you might find rolling shutter to be a bit worse, and you'll kind of get more of a jello effect if you're moving quickly. So as you can see from this test, both cameras experience this issue. However, it is much more pronounced on the E10, and the Mark II has a little bit of improvement here, which is nice to see. Next up, let's talk about overheating, because both cameras do run pretty hot to the touch if you use them after a while. The ZV-E10 Mark II does have the potential to overheat and stop recording, particularly when you're recording 4K at 60 frames per second. In our test, it overheated around 20 minutes of recording continuously at that frame rate and resolution. However, when you're shooting in 4K 24 or 30, overheating wasn't an issue. In my handling of both cameras, I found that the ZV-E10 doesn't get nearly as hot when recording in 4K 24 compared to the ZV-E10 Mark II, which definitely does run a lot warmer and is often uncomfortable to hold. Now, in my day-to-day use, I've never had the E10 Mark II overheat on me, but if you do plan on shooting in 4K, 60, or those higher frame rates, that might be a concern for you. So now it's time to touch on the battery life between both cameras. Like I mentioned before, the E10 Mark II does get a significant upgrade in battery life thanks to its larger FZ100 battery, compared to the older FW50 found in the original E10. In my testings, both cameras were recording 4K video at 24 frames per second, and the original E10 lasted around an hour and 30 minutes before the battery died. And finally, the E10 Mark II finally ran out of power after 2 hours and 21 minutes. So with the Mark II, you're looking at nearly an extra hour of shooting time, which is a big plus for longer projects, or means you don't have to bring nearly as many batteries. Now I know we covered a lot, but let's quickly run through a few of the pros and cons of each camera. The Sony ZV-E10 is a great choice for content creators. We've been recommending it for years since it first came out, and there are a few reasons why. Number one, it is Sony's cheapest mirrorless camera, so you do have the benefit of upgrading your camera or lenses over time, depending on your needs. And it's so compact and lightweight that it's easy to take with you on the go. You have a flip out screen, the autofocus performance definitely helps you make content creation just a little bit easier. Another thing that makes this camera so enticing for content creators is the price point. You can get the camera body only for around $700, but you can find it even cheaper if you shop used. And I found these typically go for around $500 to $550, and that's a great way to get up and running, especially if you just want to make YouTube videos. That being said, the ZV-E10 does have some major drawbacks. Number one is its battery life is relatively short, lasting around an hour and 30 minutes, which isn't too bad, but that might mean you have to bring several batteries if you're traveling with this camera. Number two is its build quality. It just feels a little bit plasticky and less durable than some other options. It doesn't have image stabilization, so if you are vlogging, you're gonna get some shaky footage. It only shoots 8-bit color, so if you really want to push your color grading, you're going to run in some artifacting. Also, this camera is a few years old now, so the menu system is somewhat outdated and kind of confusing for a beginner. And I'll also note that the colors of this display don't quite match up the footage that I shoot, so when I bring it in, it kind of looks a little bit different, so you can't quite rely on the image quality of this display. The Sony ZV-E10 Mark II, on the other hand, offers significant upgrades from its predecessor with several notable improvements. Number one, it has redesigned menus that are much more user-friendly and icons that take less of the screen space, so it makes navigating and choosing your different settings a lot more intuitive. The battery life is also extended, giving you an extra hour of filming time. Additionally, this camera supports 10-bit video, which gives you a lot more flexibility when color grading. It also comes with a lot of different color profiles, so you can really dial in the color you want in the camera. But the Mark II is not without its downsides as well. It tends to overheat during extended use, which can be a problem if you're filming for long periods. I've also noticed that this camera seems to overexpose my footage. Compared to the screen, it looks fine, but when I actually bring my footage into my editor, everything just looks much brighter than normal. So it requires me to go in and make some adjustments in post. Now, this camera also lacks in-body image stabilization, which means you'll need to rely on lens stabilization or other means to reduce the camera shake, which is a big shame because I do notice it's harder to get a stable shot with these lightweight cameras. Now, the ZV-E10 Mark II does come at a higher price point of $999 for the body only, which is roughly a $300 difference between these cameras. For those on a tighter budget, you might have to really consider this if it's worth those upgrades for you. So that begs the question of which camera should you buy? And I want to give a few recommendations based off of a few different users. The E10 Mark II offers several upgrades over the original. These features can make a significant difference if you're looking to future-proof your setup and you need a camera that can handle a wider range of filming scenarios. However, if your primary use is streaming, shooting indoors, the original E10 is still a solid choice, and you can often find these used for around $500, $550, making it a budget-friendly option if you're looking for good performance that won't break the bank. Now, if you were to ask me which camera I would buy if I were starting out today, ultimately, I would choose the E10 Mark II. The reason is I feel like it is a more robust camera and you won't really feel the need to upgrade it if you plan to use this for years. This has a little bit more shelf life on it. You can really grow into it and really maximize this potential from this camera because it offers so many features. The E10 is still great and I will still use it, But if I were just to pick up one, I'm grabbing the Mark II because I do think it is worth it, especially the upgrades in image quality, the ease of use, and I just know that it's going to be a better investment in the long run. But let me know in the comments which camera you're picking up, and if you're looking for some accessories for either of these cameras, be sure to check out this video where I share my favorite accessories for the ZV-E10 Mark II. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later. Peace.